And that's why the elephant crossed the road. Just thought you would like to know. We have a new question here. Thanks for your comments and your. Don't forget to hit subscribe somewhere. The question came about grandparents, my grandparents, which would be, we would call them Abuelito Eleuterio, Abuelita Matiana, which is my grandparents, my dad's parents. Was interesting because they only lived 1 block away from my mom's parents in Far, Texas. And my mom's father's name was Martiniano Rocha, and his wife, my grandmother, was Maria Rocha. Like I said, they lived a block apart. It was fun visiting with them because I would go to...
There's a lightning bug.
I would go...
Don't hurt him.
I would go to Grandma Maria's house, and she would fix me something to eat, some fresh flour tortillas and whatever she had around she would warm up and give to me. Then once we were done there, we'd go to Grandma Nuñez's house a block away, and Grandma said, "What does she give you to eat over there? I'll make you some frijoles, which some beans, and I'll make you fresh tortillas. They'll be better than what you had at the other house." So I had to eat again at Grandma Matiana's house. And Grandma Matiana was a secret smoker. She was a closet smoker. Everyone knew she smoked. Even Grandpa knew she smoked, but she kept it away from Grandpa. So Grandma would send me to the little store right across the street to get her cigarettes and I think some pop, some red pop and stuff for her. And I could get whatever I wanted. And the lady, you couldn't just enter her store. Whose store is this?
How old were you when buying cigarettes?
6 or 7 years old.
That's a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Before the laws came into place.
And you couldn't just barge in the store. You had to knock on the door and she'd say, "Who is it?" And then you tell her who you are and how you're related to the people in the neighborhood. And when I told her Oscar Nuñez, and she, "Oh, Oscar, Matiana's grandson and Maria's grandson. Oh, yes, come on in." So she undid the lock. I said, "I'm here to pick up Grandma's cigarettes and her red pop." And she said, "Oh, yeah, come in." And I didn't have to pay for anything because Grandma had an account there. So I could just take that stuff, and I was the runner for Grandma's contraband. So that was interesting. I remember her. And when Grandpa wasn't there, she'd be smoking. And the minute he pulled up with his truck, boy, that cigarette, bing, she'd fling it out in the yard and wave the breath, go inside, take a drink of that red pop or whatever she had, coffee. And before Grandpa came in, I'd be giggling because she thought Grandpa didn't know she smoked. And my grandfather was very stern, very rarely smiled. He was always serious. But when he did smile, it was always a nice little belly laugh. And my grandpa looked like my dad looked like before my dad passed away. He'd wear the Stetson cowboy hat all the time. And there was a beautiful hat that he'd wear. And he would take me and my dad out for breakfast when we went to visit there. And Grandpa would pull up to the little counter, and all of us sat there, and they knew what he wanted, just a cup of coffee. And Grandpa would smoke his Lucky Strikes cigarettes that had no filter. So he would smoke it to the very end. It's like my grandfather was smoking pot.
Not that they would know what that was.
He'd take that last breath, and then it was nothing but ashes in his fingertips as he put the cigarette out. But Grandpa had very rough hands. I remember that because he always worked in the fields and everything. A lot of hard labor. And then my Grandpa Martiniano, on my mom's side, he worked for the waterworks for Far, Texas. And so every time we go there to visit, he'd be at work, so we go over to the waterworks where they do all the water sanitation stuff and talk with him there. He'd be in his little uniform, and I say little. Grandpa,
he's a big man.
Grandpa's 6'3", something like that, 6'2". Very strong,
Probably
strong
where you
man.
got your height from. Everybody else is little.
Yeah, I'm taller than Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then Grandma Maria, she had one false eye. So you try to follow Grandma, and she look.
Why did
Mira,
she
she
have a
looking
false
at me.
eye?
She not looking at me. Mira that eye. Stay. Her hair. Eye.
Why'd she have a false eye?
Because Mom said a cloud fell into her eye.
Oh.
It sounds better in Spanish because ay le cayó una nube. That means a cloud fell into her eye and clouded up the eye. They had to take it out and put a false one on.
Huh.
So she had a glass eye.
Okay.
So
So
what
tell
about?
the story about you going to Chicago with your grandparents.
We went to a wedding of the Roylas. Roylas? No. What was their name? Rojas. Our Rojas relatives in East Chicago. And we went to the wedding. Me, my brother Joel, Grandpa Nuñez,
How old
my
were you?
parents. I was probably 10 or 11 years old, I think. And anyway, went to the wedding. Great celebration, great mass, great celebration afterwards. Dancing, carrying on. And that's the first time I saw my grandparents. You know, both of them were just a little tipsy that day, that evening. So we're trying to get home. And my dad in Chicago, East Chicago, there's several lanes, and like these, the left lane turns left, the others go straight or turn right. Well, my dad was in the wrong lane. Then he tried to move into the right lane, and he got honked at by these people in this in this car. I believe they were African Americans. Anyway, that woman was like, oh, "You stay right there! Don't you move! You stay right there!" I was talking to my dad. My dad was like, "What's going on?" And because they came up right beside us and turned. And so there was that commotion there, road rage. So my dad pulls into this filling station to see which would be the best way to get out of where we were at, because we were not in a good neighborhood. So
East Chicago wouldn't be good.
as soon as my dad stopped and went in the store, my grandfather, he was a little tipsy, got out of the station wagon we were in. He gets out and he pulls up his pants all the way up to his chest, and he yells out in a big boisterous voice, "What?" These are after these people already left. He was ready to do some fighting. Oh, that's the first time I said my grandpa come to life. You know, he had a passion at that time. And my grandma's telling the viejo to get back in the station wagon, shut your mouth, get inside. But Grandpa was looking for that woman. He's going to beat himself, some Chicago people.
Big mouth lady.
Yeah. So that's
so
my
your
grandparents.
grandma Matiana was the best cook, huh?
No comment.
Your mom was the best cook.
Mom was the best cook, yes. But it's funny to see those two grandmothers competing for our affection and our stomachs to feed us, because that was important to them. And it was wild.
How many kids did Matiana and Eleuterio have?
Matiana had 1, 2, 3, 4 children. And oddly enough, I think they all had diabetes, except four kids, 5 kids.
Wait a minute.
One was a police.
Matiana or Maria?
Maria.
Maria had 4
The
kids.
Rocha
Right.
family.
That's Martiniano and Maria had 4 or 5 kids.
Right. Then Matiana, I can't tell you, probably 11 children.
I was going to say, yeah.
That was a lot. And my dad, there was a person born before my dad. He died, I think,
As an infant.
As an infant. Then my dad was the oldest.
Actually, your dad was the oldest, and then Alfonso passed away when he was 2, and then the next child came.
So there were a lot. But big families. At night they told us to come in, about this time. It was still daylight. We'd have to come in, because if not, the bruja was going to get us, which is the witch that travels
the boogeyman, I thought.
and capture all these little children. And they called her La Llorona, the crying woman, because she lost her children, and she was wanting more children. And so if you were out, she was going to capture you.
What was her name?
La Llorona. I can't say I get chills, mira. I'm all chill ahorita. And we did have street vendors. That was cool. You had, of course, the ice cream guy who was peddling the ice cream vehicle, the tricycle selling ice cream. But there was one guy that had this little canopy, this little wagon with his bicycle, and he would scream out "Elote!" real loud, and elote means corn. So he had fresh corn on his cart, and Grandma would send us. And
It was cooked
mothers
corn?
No, it wasn't cooked
It was
corn.
raw?
It was corn on the cob.
But it wasn't cooked?
No, it was right out of the field. Esta loca cook. And
Why
we
did
go
they say
right now.
elote?
Because that's the name of corn, is elote. Masarina is the corn meal.
Oh.
Harina,
I didn't know.
harina is the flour. So when you go to the Mexican stores and find masarina, that masa, which means corn, is flour, which means harina.
You didn't know Grandpa was Greek
So
and Mexican.
There you go.
Love you.
Adios.